Hi, this is Amanda.
And this is Jen.
And you're listening to Just This, a podcast that explores everything around being and becoming a mother or parent.
We're excited to have you join us as we dive into the practical details as well as the unseen energetics on topics that span from preconception to years after birth.
All right, we're here today to talk about breastfeeding. Jen's very excited to speak about this is kind of like the postpartum. It's like breastfeeding has such a large scope, and Jen really wants to narrow it down to the first week.
Again, like this postpartum first week.
But then we can touch a little bit on
after too,
as far as just the general scope of breastfeeding. So we're here to talk about boobies.
Boobies. What are some other names for boobies? You know,
boobies.
Does Penelope have a name?
Oh, kids' names for them. She calls them boobies.
Yeah. She calls them boobies.
What did Eli call them?
Melvin now calls them nine-eyes.
Nine-eyes.
Yeah, which means like milk in Cantonese. But
cool.
Yeah. I think I wanted to talk about this topic specifically because we really don't see breastfeeding in the first week of life. And I think it's very, very difficult for women. I think it's some of the most time I spend with women, especially postpartum. I actually really enjoy this time with them because it's just very intimate, and you really have to everything gets slowed down to baby. And I think that's kind of nice because we get to go to baby's pace. And you really there's no rushing it. So you make the time to be present with them for that. There's no let me try to squeeze in, running to the grocery store in X amount of time, because babies are going to only eat when they're hungry. You can't force them on the boobies to eat or anything. But it's so common for women to struggle during this time. And so I just kind of want to put that on the forefront, how difficult, especially that first week is, and because we just don't see how difficult it is if we are seeing breastfeeding. If we are seeing breastfeeding, usually we're seeing a bigger baby where they're eating dinner and they're all, they've got everything down, right? They've had tons of hours of practice with baby.
Yeah. I think this is similar to what we've talked about with birth in some ways, where there is a lot talked about it, but not talked about the struggle.
Yeah.
Struggle is somewhat just ignored and not brought into the light as much as there's these beautiful, when baby is born, do the skin to skin. And I remember seeing videos of him crawling up the mom, looking for the nipple and then latching perfectly and then suckling. And
that's called the baby crawl, by the way. And it can take a long time. Yeah. Watch it, Google or YouTube it, and watch it yourself. That's what Amanda's talking about. But yeah, go on.
Well, and what I assumed is this was just such a natural part. Even the midwives at the home, the birthing center, were saying this is kind of what happens. This is what baby will do. And my experience working in postpartum is that's often not what happens. Even though we want it to, and 100% the struggle is real. And even you had mentioned, we can talk about first time, second time, you attend, most of the people I work with are actually first time mothers, but you have a lot of exposure to people with multiples. And you were saying even second, third, fourth, every baby is different. And while you might have that wisdom in your body around the breastfeeding, it can still be a big struggle in those first week to, I'd say, even a few weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And part of the reason why I say that, especially to second time moms, and we'll go back to first time in a little bit, but is that, when they ended breastfeeding, it wasn't a newborn. It wasn't this very small mouth. Probably ended in what I call breastfeeding yoga, where they're doing handstands and all over your body and they're breastfeeding. That's when they remember last breastfeeding, most likely, or even just cradled in the arm, but very relaxed, probably 3 to 6 months in. Again, this is averages compared to a newborn, which is likes to be tight, likes to be cuddled, has not spent, more than, if we're talking the first week, 7 days outside the womb, smaller mouths, like all that stuff plays a role. And I try to remind moms that are multips, so moms that have had more than one kid, like new baby, new breastfeeding. You have knowledge now, which is really good. You have some skills, right? Like, hey, I ran through this marathon once, so I kind of get an idea of what I'm preparing for, or, even like camping or something, if we're related to that, like you have an idea, like, okay, I know what I'm going to pack, but each train and weather and like who's going and all that stuff is going to change. And that could be like related to the baby.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a great example, but yeah.
I think that's a great example. I like that.
So,
the train that, yeah.
And I think a common misconception, like I had this one mom, there's been a lot of struggles, and like a lot of it is just kind of playing to see what works. I think the best advice, and I tell this to every client before I even start any breastfeeding advice and help and stuff, is I said, you're going to get a lot of information. You're going to get a ton of advice about breastfeeding, including from me. Take what works, toss out everything else that doesn't. Try it. If it doesn't work, toss it out. Bring it back in on another day. It might work. But like, you're just going to get a ton of conflicting information. And that's really, I think, hard, especially for first-time moms where they don't have any basis to go off of. And the best advice I personally got was just to kind of have fun with it. And I think the reason why that's so helpful is because it just helps you to relax. Babies are so in tune with us that if we're stressed out because baby's not latching and baby's crying and we're hormonal, we just had a baby and we just made a baby for 9 months and our hormones are whacked and we're getting no sleep, right? Because babies are up every 2 to 3 hours now. Add all that on top of like this crying baby that you love, that just inside your soul when they cry is just, So it's a lot. It can be a lot. Best advice, have fun, take it easy.
Yeah, my advice, I would say, is get the in-person support. And that can be anyone. That doesn't have to be a professional lactation consultant or a postpartum doula or anything like that. It can be its own struggle. However, if you know someone before you have baby that is just a supportive person, and even better if they have breastfed, if you have a friend that has been through breastfeeding before, or someone who maybe does work in the birth worker world, or maybe you do hire a postpartum doula, even setting up the options of being able to, I know there's so many emerging things now. There's apps where you can, through a lot of insurances, have sleep consultants and lactation consultants and all those come straight to your house. So just if you're in your pregnancy stage, kind of planning that into, okay, who might be the person I can call, and not necessarily, like you were saying, for the tactical information, but for someone who just understands. And what you were saying with you're going to get so much information, it's because there is no one way to do it. And you don't know until baby comes what the dance is going to look like. And so often when people are giving you information, it's more of try this, try that, try this, because you got to try a lot of things before you feel, okay, this movement or this position felt best for baby and for me, or this one seemed to work during this time. So yeah, people will be giving you a lot of information, and know that it's not to learn it all, it's to try it all. And then you can say, okay, I tried this, and these seem to be the things that felt best for me and baby. And having somebody there for the emotional support that can understand more than the tactical. The tactical is great, but if you've had a mom that has breastfed before, that's enough, in my opinion. It doesn't need to be a magical person with degrees, or it can be helpful if you're persisting to have breastfeeding issues through beyond 2-3 weeks, and that'll come up in whoever you're working with, as far as midwife,
and that looks
doctor,
like
they'll know, they'll tell you.
And you'll know because your nipples will hurt. And that's how you know that the latch is not good and breastfeeding is not going on. Yes.
Your nipples will hurt regardless.
Okay, hold on. Back up for 1 minute. So I just want to say real quick, what you're talking about with like just having moms that have breastfed before, that's like basically La Leche League, right? That was started by a group of moms that have just breastfed. So I think they're a great resource, and they have chapters all over. Okay.
Yes.
Now,
however,
back to sore nipples. Go ahead.
First week, you're not leaving the house.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to get at is I think breastfeeding groups in general, La Leche League or any other breastfeeding circles, wherever you live, there's going to be lactation circles are awesome. Do those as you get further on, ideally past 4 weeks or more, because you don't want to be leaving the house too much in that first 4 to 5 weeks. I say 4 to 6 weeks, but those were golden for me. If you are in a hospital or you do have a midwife, make sure to, if you have a home birth and a midwife's checking in with you, I would say always make sure to talk about breastfeeding every single day. So whenever they come, talk about it. When I had to be in the hospital because my baby was in the NICU, somebody had told me to take advantage of all the resources here. Breastfeeding consultant come twice a day. And I literally talked to 2 different, because they change the shifts. I have to talk to a different person in the morning and a different person at night for almost 8 days, not 8 days, 4 days. So eight people. And it was great. It was like being able to, like you said, have all these different opinions, different things. And it really was helpful. I did struggle. My breastfeeding experience was a big struggle at the beginning, but my baby was very small. And the nipple, they wanted to use nipple shields, which we can go into. And at first I was very anti-nipple shield because I thought it was going to affect potentially the baby actually transitioning to bare breasts later. And that's a whole nother topic. So, which is not true. I just want to add that in there in case you hop off after that. But not true. Not true at all. My baby then went on to not only have a fine latch and right on the breast, but breastfeed well into 2-3 years old, 2 or 3. So I was like, okay, this was not a problem in the long run. It's not a problem. And I've recommended nipple shields, especially for women that have flatter or inverted nipples. And my goal always when I utilize them is to wean off of them eventually, but sometimes you need them. You can think of it like riding a tricycle, right? Or not a tricycle, sorry, a two-wheel bike, and then you need training wheels. You just need them for a little bit, and then once everyone's kind of got the idea in the field, then you can take them off. Not always, especially with inverted nipples, sometimes you actually do need something. But and I think the other thing going back to nipples here is that I think there's a big misconception that baby needs to be on the nipple, and that's not true. Baby needs to be on the areola. If baby is just sucking on your nipple will crack and it'll hurt so bad. It does not feel good at all. There is a difference between soreness and pain. And that can be a hard distinction for people who aren't used to, nobody's, if you haven't had a baby, used to as much. Maybe there are people out there, nipple stimulation as you're getting with a baby. It's pretty consistent with a baby. And so often 8 hours a day, by the way, a minimum 8 hours a day, baby's on the breast. 8, I would say minimum 12, but at the beginning, right? Yeah, that's true. Because babies feed. Baby's feeding every 2 hours, usually not feeding for the full 2 hours. How about this? We'll say 8 to 12 hours daily. Yeah. And they're on there for a long time. They are. That's the other thing is people, again, when you're comparing, if you're seeing somebody or what you're exposed to for breastfeeding with an older babies are more efficient. Way more efficient. Newer babies are not. And it could take them literally 20 minutes on one breast sometimes. 30 minutes. And so that's another thing is going at baby's pace, very slow, very patient, which can be a big shift just immediately post-birth. Yeah. And going back to that time too, when we say the start of a newborn feeding, it's from the start, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So say it's 11 o'clock and you start feeding baby and baby feeds till 11:30. Well, we're starting that 2 hour mark at 11. So we're most likely it's not like, oh, he's done it. So that's what I'm saying. It is at least 12 times a day, because if you, 12 times a day, I was saying hours. Okay. 12 times. It's 12 hours. But then, depending on how long they feed for. So they could feed for up to an hour. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I would say 8 to 12 is I think it's a good. Yeah. 8 to 12 is a good estimate. Sure. Someone's done the math out there. It's going to be, that's something to expect, is soreness. And I agree that should not be extreme pain. However, how do you define soreness?
let's like say I'm your midwife here and you're like, my nipples are sore. And as a midwife, I'm like, okay, please tell me more. Cause I want to make sure you're not going to start having cracked nipples or cystitis or anything else, clogged ducts, all these things that could go winky. So what do you mean by soreness?
This is where the pain scale comes in. I don't know, Jen, how would you describe soreness? Because there is, I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's a fine line. I find it's hard to distinguish without actually looking at the nipples sometimes or seeing the baby latch and seeing how the pain goes. But I agree, if you're in if it's like extreme pain.
Hey, we should discuss this because I don't want you to have any cracked nipples. And the other thing too is that don't power through. They're sensitive. Just be like nice to them, because they shouldn't be hurting. And over time, that's going to cause a lot of pain in the nipple because he's literally reshaping it to look like a lipstick, like, the kind of, curved edge and stuff. I don't know if you've seen it. It's such a trip. It's like, wow. But so don't suffer through. That's my whole thing. And yeah, I think getting support is important. And that first week is just so hard because you have to, not only are you trying to feed baby, but you really have to like set up, right? Like when I go in there with moms that need help breastfeeding, it's like, we got pillows and we got blankets and we got to get them naked and we got to get baby naked. And it's like a whole process just set up for one breastfeeding, right? And so, and then on top of that, they might not even latch because holding baby's head and like doing all these positions, they don't feel comfortable to us because they're new. So then you're also doing that. And then you're also interacting, like you said, with your dance partner, the baby. So I think that I think we just need to be more graceful with each other. Well, not each other, with ourselves. I think the other thing too that we get a lot is like, is baby getting enough? Did you ever come across that in your postpartum?
Yeah, because I was required to do a certain amount of time, and also was using that additional feed because baby was small. So it was always, I had to use supplemental nutritional system with donor milk. And I was an underproducer, I guess, versus an overproducer, which both of them present their own problems. The grass is always greener. You will feel like you're either underproducing or overproducing. I don't know one person I've met that's like, I produce the perfect amount, nobody ever says that. But yes, and then there's this leads into past 1 week of, okay, are we leaving the baby on the breast too long if they're still sucking and they're not really getting anything and it's for comfort? And really, if it's in that I don't care, first month, who cares? Yeah. In my opinion, if the baby's still sucking to get comfort, let the baby suck to get comfort, as long as you're, happy. You're okay as a mom. And
on that note too, people don't know, but sucking is how it's like a supply and demand chain. So if baby's on there sucking, they're on there sucking because they need to increase the demand, which is the milk. And they will regulate that. Like we have to allow them to regulate it. Of course, after your milk comes in, it's all kind of winky for a little bit. It's what's going on? We like had all this sucking and now there's like all this milk. And so it takes a little while to kind of like get back to normal, but the sucking is actually good and we want it because that's how they're going to get the amount that they actually need.
Yeah. On the note of just overproducing, underproducing, and is baby getting enough? I guess we can finish the is baby getting enough thought. Do you have anything else to say on that? I have such a weird relationship with this whole is baby getting enough, and I know we have to go by these standards of where's the baby's weight at, and baby's weight gain, which is usually monitored depending on your situation, very like monitored in that first week especially. And baby is ultimately getting enough as long as they're not losing weight is kind of my understanding, and ideally gaining weight. Is that?
Yeah. So it's not uncommon like after birth for baby to actually lose weight because they're pooping, right? So that takes off weight, and we're talking ounces, right? I mean, this is like so light.
This is just in the first day though, correct?
No, so the way that, at least in midwifery, like we don't want to see a baby lose more than 10% from their birth weight. And ideally back to its birth weight by 2 weeks fully. And usually that happens like within the first week. What generally happens is day 3 is kind of when you get your milk coming in. And before that's colostrum. So during those like first 3 days, generally baby's losing weight because they're peeing and pooing and they're really not getting like a ton of food in their systems. And then sometimes what happens, like if we do a visit on day 3, like you won't really see that increase. And they're like, but I've been feeding all day. And it's like, well, it hasn't processed through to create weight into their body in the amounts that you're seeing like a huge weight gain increase.
And that's why you're feeding every 2 hours as well. That's why your clock starts and you have to put baby on the breast, because baby will also just sleep. Sometimes they'll just continue sleeping, because that's a big question from parents is, why can't we just let baby keep sleeping?
Yeah. A sleeping baby that doesn't wake up every 2 to 3 hours, that's also not like, they should be waking themselves up more frequently. Every once in a while, you'll get babies that are like, oh yeah, they slept for 4 hours and it was great. And it is good. And they're like, now I got huge engorged breasts and clogged ducts. It's like, yeah, that 4 hours is probably great. And now you're paying for it, sadly. I mean, that's after the breast milk comes in. Yeah. I mean, usually a baby not waking is kind of a sign of fatigue. And that's not really what we want. We want baby to like wake up every 2 to 3 hours generally for the most part, but otherwise it's not. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they do, but I feel a lot of the times that you kind of might have to, maybe baby will be waking up within 30 minutes of that 2-hour mark. But my experience in postpartum, especially in those early weeks, is we kind of have to bring baby over. Parents will sometimes be like, why pick up the baby? It's sleeping so calmly. It's like, it's time to feed. It's time to feed. Are
they swaddling baby?
Sometimes. Yeah.
I know sometimes like swaddling will. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Sometimes you do have to wake baby up, but I'd say for the most part, babies should wake up on their own. Like if there was a baby not waking up regularly, I would definitely have the mom be waking them up for sure. No doubt. No more than 3 hours without it. Yeah. And I think the other thing that people like, and I tell people on this in my birthing class is, how do we know that baby's getting enough? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really important question. And it's like, how do you know that we're eating or drinking?
Poop and pee.
Yeah, we poo and pee.
That's why they have you track it.
Yeah. And so it's kind of simple. On day 1, it's 1 pee, 1 poo. Day 2, 2 pee, 2 poos. Day 3, 3, all the way up to day 5. So on day 5, it's 5 pee, 5 poo. And then you like continue. And
then after that, it's just a matter of baby eat.
It's like 7 to 10 times. Like you're probably changing the diaper after that. And the other one too is like that I have that I'll teach parents to like look for is kind of that suck. And then they kind of like relax their jaw a little bit and it drops a little bit. And that's like the milk going in. If I have time and we remember, or mom was really concerned, we will also do like a pre-weight and a post-weight for baby. And then you really get to know how much they're intaking. And that can be really beneficial, especially if you're having a baby that's not gaining a ton of weight.
Yeah. My intuition is always to, not that numbers are bad, but there's so much, I think, in our medical system, especially around numbers, and that can really be stressful. And I think this is actually a good liaison into this part of breastfeeding, is the stress part, because there's so much in that first week of make sure, baby's waking up every 2 hours, make sure that you're counting the pees and poops, make sure that we're weighing baby kind of you'll weigh them on a certain schedule to kind of track this and that. So it can be a lot of numbers and a lot already to deal with, and beyond just your own physical adjustments to everything. So my intuition is always to reduce that, not to remove that from your worry bucket, unless it's a necessity, if you have a small baby or it lost a ton of weight or something along those lines. And chances are, if you have a midwife or when you go to the pediatrician or whatever it is, they're going to do that anyway.
They'll weigh the baby.
So they're going to, they won't red flag it or, say, hey, like, let's track this more unless it's necessary.
There's a reason.
But on that note, stress and breastfeeding is a big thing. And that first week is very stressful. And like you said, positioning with a million pillows. By the way, everyone has a different thing that they love. Some people love the breast friend. We'll link that in the show notes. Some people, I loved the boppy, just the normal boppy. I didn't go anywhere without my boppy for 6 months, I think.
Yeah.
Boppy was a part of me. Some people just like a pillow. Some people, everybody has a different setup, and they can be very exuberant. But that, having the setup, having, all the things you're dealing with in the first week, and then you throw on anything that you're supposed to track or you're worrying about with the baby, and it can be very stressful, which ultimately all the hormones, and we can get into this. I know there's a hormone chart we're supposed to create
I know.
for that first,
Sorry,
for the first week or month, which we will eventually. You want to, it's cortisol, right? That we're talking about with stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's a direct correlation to how stressed you are and your milk production. Now, if we're talking the first week, when your milk comes in, this can be different because your body's pumping it out. But generally, also the letdown and how easeful and how much baby's going to get is going to change based on your stress levels. So again, as much as you can, once you are in your position or whatever it is, even when you are trying to get baby to latch, having your toolkit of what's going to allow you to drop in. I had headphones, and I had a breastfeeding meditation from Rachel Yellen, who's great.
Cool. Yeah.
And I will link that too. I listened to that every time. I would put it in, I would turn it on, and I would just sit there and let the words flow over me. It was just like breastfeeding affirmations, basically, because it was very stressful, very hard. And the more you can, even if you're in that state leading up to latch and getting preparation, the more, once you're there, baby's on, I had the SNS system, the nipple shield, the baby, it's like everything's there. Okay, now I'm just gonna lean back, close my eyes, and just listen to my meditation, because that was the only way I could get into this. I need to calm my body down enough, both for my own sanity and also to get the milk flowing. So I don't
it's so true.
Tips you have around that?
No, and I just want to add that, baby's also very in tune to your stress. So like your stress, baby's going to feel that, and just want to add that in there. But yeah, you're 100% spot on.
And that can be a cycle too, because if a lot of times our stress will come if baby's already hungry. And this can come mostly, I find, after week 1, but baby will get overly hungry because we haven't latched, or we went beyond the cues, overly hungry, crying. And once they're overly hungry and they're crying, they're kind of in a worked up cycle. And it's hard to get them to latch because they're so frantic, and that can stress the mom out, and then the mom's stressing the baby out. And this is a vicious circle of motherhood, and you and your baby that will actually continue
as they get older.
Something about it though, as a baby, crying baby, like you said, it just, there's something about it.
It's hard to explain, but it just stabs at your soul. It's like, and specifically like your kid or something. It's very interesting. I also want to say too that, I agree with you about the crying baby. I took a course from a lactation consultant, and her thing was like, you can never put a crying baby to the breast. And it's so true. I've seen it like a million times. We all try because we know that baby's hungry, but it's like, you do really have to calm them down and then get them on the breast, because that breast, that nipple can be in their mouth, and they're just, all you have to do is suck. Like, it's right there, little one, and like, nope, they're not going to do it.
My daughter's still like that. She gets hangry and gets emotional, and I'm like, you need some food. I'm not hungry. You are hungry.
Yeah, you're serious hungry. I think the other thing I want to say too, and it's kind of related to the stress or the flow, but is that we really do need more fluids and food than breastfeeding than we do being pregnant. And one of the other differences is that breastfeeding will pull nutrients and minerals and things like that out of your body to feed the child, while pregnancy will not do that. So it's like highly important to make sure you're getting enough fluids and eating more than when you were actually pregnant, because you're gonna lose it. And I just say this, and I say it so many times. I think people have like heard me say it way too many times, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's important. There was a mom that I was talking to, and she exclusively breastfed for an entire year. Not breastfed, sorry, exclusively pumped for an entire year. If you've ever pumped, let me tell you, like, I give that woman some like kudos, because that's not easy, But anyway, she pumped for an entire year, and she told me this. She said because I was talking to her about how I really believe there is a correlation between how much fluids you get for breastfeeding and how much milk supply you have. And she said 100%.
How much you're drinking water, what you're saying, how much you're intaking water.
Exactly. And she said 100% based on what she eats and how much she drinks will, like, exactly affect how much milk she is putting into the pump. And I just thought that was great because as a breastfeeding mama, I did pump, but I breastfed predominantly. I had that luxury, but I couldn't tell you that. I couldn't be like, yeah, I ate really healthy this week and my breast milk was more, it was better. So I just really like that feedback because it just really proves that whole point that, what we're eating and making sure that we're getting enough to drink will directly.
The water is a huge thing. Drink as much water, have a big jug around, especially in that first month postpartum.
Were you the one that told me that you loved the hospital cups?
Yes, we mentioned this on our week 1 episode, the hospital one, and even people who do home births, I've seen them. Because once you're done with them, people are giving them away for free on all these moms groups and stuff. And just go get one and you can bedazzle it. And it's great because it has a handle. It has a straw. I mean, nowadays, this is becoming more trendy of having these cups that are huge. Sure. People are being encouraged to drink more water. But I like those. I mean, I know they're plastic, which is probably not the best. But I don't know. They're big. They're the good size, they're easy, they're not breakable, they have a lot of aluminum ones now that are out there, I guess aluminum, that are just, those ones are good too, but if you're looking for something cost effective and easy, I have no problem with those plastic
and ones. I think, like you said in the other podcast, like it's just for a little while and it's better to be drinking than not drinking.
The other thing we did mention in the week 1 episode, and I want to reiterate here that you just highlighted, is the calorie burning is real and the weight loss thing is real. So do not, because we've brought this up and we haven't talked about dieting, quote unquote, postpartum or,
body image.
Yeah. Body image, people being concerned about what they're eating, try to eat healthy, obviously, foods that are going to be warming. We've talked about this before. However, don't restrict yourself. My whole thing is don't even worry about dieting, quote unquote, while you're breastfeeding at all. I really had to kind of struggle with that one later on, when like past 6 months of, I have to just release this right now because my child I am still breastfeeding. And I think it was finally after 2 years, I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna just do what I want at this point. But all the way up until then, I just had to remember, I brought this up in the other episode. Somebody had told me once that lactating cows, they actually have to give them breaks. They have to cycle them because they lose too much weight if they're constantly milking them all the time, that they wouldn't be able. So it is crazy how calorie intensive lactation is.
It is.
And again, it can really affect your production if you're trying to limit what you're eating or not listening to your body, I think, with what it's actually craving.
And in that, your mood too, right? Like if you're not getting enough calories and the right nutrients, like your mood's going to definitely be affected as well. Kind of circling back to that too. Anything else on breastfeeding, specifically the first week? No toddler gymnastics of breastfeeding. Or breastfeeding older babies, that's actually another topic we could potentially talk about. Yours breastfed till like 2 or 3. Mine did too. I think it was even later. I gotta think. It's been a while. But that's also another topic we can do at some point.
Yeah, we can circle back. I think this is good for initial thoughts around breastfeeding, just to highlight it's not easy. It can be easy for some. However, most people experience some struggle with breastfeeding, and that's normal. You're not alone. And the biggest thing I think around it is to find community, find other people who understand, find those experts that you can call or ask questions, and know that it gets easier. And it gets better. And I think one other thing I want to slip in here is there are people who are, and this, I was one of them, that especially as maybe a first time parent, you're like, oh, I want to exclusively breastfeed, or I only want the best for my baby. I only want them to have my breast milk. And formula, if they have any formula, it's horrible. It's going to ruin everything. And that's not true. We'll just put it that way. Of course, as science has shown, I do believe that generally getting your breast milk is the best thing for baby. However, if you can't for some reason and you need to use formula, your baby is totally fine. They're going to be healthy. They're going to survive. It's not detrimental to baby. And if you need to supplement occasionally with formula, totally fine.
Yes.
Don't stress yourself out.
Yes.
It's sometimes actually I find for especially under producers, it's if that's going to relieve a certain amount of stress off you, you will actually produce better if you're supplementing and adding in that formula here and there. So
yeah. And it's not, I think the other thing I noticed, and I'm so glad you brought this up because I was going to bring it up too, is that it just like, it doesn't make you a worse mom. Yes. I think that when we can't breastfeed our kid, that's like one thing as a mom, we feel we should but should be able to do, right? Like we're the mom, we should be able to feed the baby. That's how it is. And I just want to say you are feeding your baby, whether it is formula or breast milk. And yeah, the science is there. Breast milk, of course, has a ton of immune boosting, like you just can't compete, but like fed is better, right? And so don't, like you said, being stress-free is better. A little bit of breast milk is better than none. If you can't do it, then formula is fine. And I tell moms too, the other thing I tell them is like, it's so funny because if you think back, our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they bottle fed, they formula fed as like a thought process to just know that it's not this horrible thing that we have come in our current modern society to believe. Formula is this awful thing.
I was not breastfed. I was formula fed.
That's what's wrong with you.
And I turned out fine and I'm a healthy person.
No, you're amazing.
Yeah. Amazing and so smart and put on a pedestal that they were potentially never touched a boob. I
don't know what kind of feeding any other person in my life has. Do you know yours?
From other parents, you mean? Or
like just in general? Like, do you know if Ben was formula or breastfed?
I don't.
Yeah, see? He could have been formula fed too.
Yeah. I know it's hard sometimes to pull out and see the forest amongst the tree that's in front of you, but it's always helpful. You do what you can. You do what you can. And just even wanting to do something, even when you don't have the ability to do it, that's all it takes is that intention sometimes. Really,
and I think too, formula has changed so much from even like 10 or 20 years ago. There's definitely really great, I think, formula options out there nowadays. It's definitely challenging. And I think the whole reason why I want to do this podcast is just to really validate that and for people and to know it gets better. The more we practice things, the better it is. Don't be in pain for more than 10 seconds if you are unlatched. And have fun, try to make it your thing. I think the best thing I always recommend to partners to give them jobs is have the breastfeeding station stocked constantly. Wherever you sit to breastfeed, have snacks, get your water, have your partner refill them, have partner take baby after you're done breastfeeding so that you can, or even bottle feeding if that's the case, so that you can rest a little bit. So, and get, like you said, get resources, definitely use them if you're at the hospital. I like that you ask twice a day. I'm going to start telling that to my clients. I always say utilize it, but I like the twice a day one because some IBCLCs, like some of the information they've given people for this person, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's a good, I would never say that, but I'm just like,
I was told that because they change shifts. And so, and you're up all the time feeding baby anyway. And they're like, well, you're here. Just exactly. Yeah, so.
And it's good to get like fresh eyes. And again, like just different information and opinion, because the previous one might've sucked or the other one was really good. And you're like, wow, this other one's not so great or whatever. So yeah. Good.
Happy breastfeeding, everyone.
Happy breastfeeding or formula feeding.
Formula feeding. Yeah. Happy baby feeding.
Hey there, amazing listeners. We just want to say a huge thank you for tuning into our convo on the Just This podcast today. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and your continued support means the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode and found value in it, we would be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it too. Your reviews and shares not only motivate us, but they also help others discover our show.
We're also all about keeping the conversation going and hanging out with our incredible community. Head over to justthis.site, that's justhis.site, where you'll find additional resources, ways to connect with us, and join the conversation, plus some more goodies.
Thank you again for being a part of the Just This community. We'll be back soon. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and embrace the wonder as you navigate this extraordinary adventure.